You know that person who was always there, always answering, always helping, and then one day they just vanished? No drama, no explanation, just gone. The texts turned to red receipts. The calls went unanswered. The friendship that felt solid just evaporated overnight. Yeah, that person isn't cruel. They're protecting something. If you're someone who's ever felt the need to completely withdraw from everyone around you, to cut people off without warning, welcome. You're about to feel very seen. And today, we're breaking down the psychology of people who cut everyone off, the ones society calls cold, but science calls something else entirely. Here's the thing. Most people think cutting people off is a sign of immaturity, like you can't handle conflict, like you're running away, like you lack communication skills. They say things like, "You could have just talked about it," or "Why didn't you give them a chance?" But here's what nobody tells you. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is disappear. Not because you're weak, because you finally became strong enough to choose yourself. Psychologists call this emotional boundary enforcement. Your brain recognized a threat to your peace, and instead of explaining, defending, or negotiating, you simply removed yourself from the equation. For years, maybe your whole life, you were taught to be available, to answer when people call, to help when they ask, to forgive when they hurt you, to stay, even when every cell in your body screamed to leave. And you did it because you thought that's what good people do. But here's the brutal truth. Being endlessly available doesn't make you good. It makes you a tool. And the moment you stop being useful, those same people who praised your kindness will call you selfish for finally protecting yourself. But there's more going on than just setting boundaries. Some people cut everyone off because the world has drained them so completely that withdrawal isn't a choice. It's survival. Out there, people don't see you. They see what you provide: emotional support, validation, entertainment, a place to dump their problems. And you gave it freely, thinking connection meant sacrifice. But all you got in return was exhaustion. Carl Jung talked about psychic energy, the idea that your mind operates like a battery, and every interaction, every emotional labor, every time you said yes when you meant no, it drained you. And when you're finally empty, cutting people off isn't aggression, it's self-preservation. Here's something wild. Studies show that people who periodically withdraw from social circles tend to have stronger self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Why? Because they understand that not every relationship deserves to be saved. They know the difference between solitude and loneliness. They've learned that being alone is better than being surrounded by people who make you feel alone. Cutting people off isn't antisocial. It's selective. It's knowing your worth is not measured by how many people have access to you. And let's be honest, society romanticizes loyalty. The friend who never leaves, the partner who stays through everything, the family member who forgives no matter what. But what if loyalty to others means betrayal of yourself? What if staying means dying a little more every day? That's not noble. That's self-destruction. And some people finally wake up to that truth and choose themselves, even if it means walking away from everyone. Now, some people cut everyone off for a darker reason, not because they were drained, but because they're terrified of being seen. Because real intimacy feels like exposure, and exposure feels like danger. And for them, cutting people off isn't power, it's fear disguised as independence. So it's important to know, did you cut people off because they were toxic, or because you're avoiding the vulnerability that real connection requires? Because one is strength, the other is hiding. But for those who genuinely needed to cut everyone off, they're not monsters. They're just finally awake. They find peace in the silence that used to terrify them. They discover that the emptiness they feared was actually spaciousness. Room to breathe, room to think, room to exist without performing, explaining, or apologizing for taking up space. Hit subscribe if you think you're this type. Psychologists call this strategic social withdrawal. These people don't hate connection. They hate shallow connection. They'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who don't truly see them. So if you're someone who's walked away from friendships, relationships, entire social circles without looking back, you're not broken. You're just done accepting crumbs when you deserve the whole meal. Because here's the truth most people never hear. You've been conditioned to believe that your worth lies in how available you are, that being present for everyone makes you valuable. But that's a lie, and it's a dangerous one, because the more available you are, the less people value you. You become predictable. You become convenient. You become the person they call when they need something, not the person they think about when they don't. Carl Jung talked about the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. And for years, you wore that mask. You said, "It's okay," when you were screaming inside. You responded to texts immediately, even when you were exhausted. You showed up for people who wouldn't cross the street for you. And you did it because you were afraid. Afraid of being abandoned, afraid of being alone, afraid of being seen as selfish, cold, difficult. But that fear kept you trapped. Trapped in relationships that were one-sided. Trapped in dynamics where you gave everything and received nothing. Trapped in a version of yourself that existed only to please others. And then something shifted. Maybe it was a betrayal. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Maybe you woke up one day and realized you didn't recognize yourself anymore. And in that moment, you made a decision that changed everything. You stopped being available. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped defending your boundaries. You just left. And the world didn't understand. People called you cold. They said you changed. They accused you of being selfish, dramatic, over-dramatic. But you know what they really meant? You're not useful to me anymore. Because here's what happens when you cut people off. The people who genuinely cared will respect your distance. They might be confused, hurt even, but they'll respect it. But the people who only valued what you provided, they'll panic. They'll try to guilt you back. They'll call you names. They'll tell mutual friends you're crazy. Because your absence reveals the truth. They never wanted you. They wanted your function. And now that you're gone, they have to face the emptiness they were using you to avoid. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." So when you become unavailable, pay attention to who gets irritated, who tries to provoke you, who demands an explanation. Because their reaction isn't about you. It's about them. It's about what they're losing. And what they're losing isn't you. It's the role you played in their life. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Because cutting people off forces you to sit with yourself. No distractions, no one to save, no drama to manage. Just you and the silence. And that silence, it's terrifying at first. You start questioning everything. Did I do the right thing? Am I being too harsh? What if I'm the problem? But if you sit with it long enough, that silence transforms. It becomes clarity. It becomes peace. It becomes the foundation of a life where you're no longer available for emotional crumbs, mind games, or relationships that only exist because you're afraid to be alone. But let's talk about the real cost, because cutting everyone off isn't free. You lose people. You lose history. You lose the comfort of familiarity. You'll have nights where you wonder if you made a mistake. You'll see photos of people you used to know, living their lives without you, and you'll feel a pang of something. Regret, maybe? Or just the ghost of who you used to be. But here's what you gain. Yourself, your energy, your peace, your dignity. And once you experience what it feels like to live without constantly managing other people's emotions, you'll realize you didn't lose anything. You freed yourself. Carl Jung understood that the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires isolation. Not forever, but for a season. A sacred time where you step away from the noise, the projections, the expectations, and you rebuild yourself from the inside out, where you relearn who you are when you're not performing for an audience. And this process is lonely, but it's necessary, because you can't become whole while you're still fragmented across a dozen relationships that demand you be everything except yourself. And here's the part that no one tells you. When you cut people off and do the inner work, when you sit with the discomfort and come out the other side, you don't go back to who you were. You become someone new. Someone who doesn't need external validation. Someone who doesn't react to every provocation. Someone who knows that silence is not weakness. It's mastery. You stop being a people pleaser and become a person. And that shift, it changes everything. Now you're selective. You don't let just anyone into your space. You don't respond to every message. You don't explain your decisions. You don't defend your boundaries. You simply enforce them. And the people who deserve access, they get it, but they earn it. They prove through their actions, not their words, that they value you. And everyone else? They get your absence. And your absence, when you've truly detached, is the most powerful statement you can make. Because here's the final truth. The people who are meant for you won't need you to be endlessly available. They won't drain you. They won't make you feel guilty for having boundaries. They'll respect your space, your energy, your peace. And the people who don't? Cutting them off wasn't a loss. It was liberation. You didn't lose friends. You lost energy vampires. You didn't lose family. You lost obligation disguised as love. You didn't lose a relationship. You lost a prison you didn't even know you were in. So if you've cut everyone off, if you've walked away without explanation, if you've chosen silence over endless justification, know this: you're not cold. You're awake. You're not cruel. You're clear. You're not running away. You're running toward yourself. And the loneliness you feel right now? It's not emptiness, it's spaciousness. It's the room you need to finally become who you were meant to be before the world told you who to be. Tell me, have you ever cut everyone off? Or are you still holding on to people who drain you? And if you want the psychology that most people never hear about themselves, the next video is going to hit you harder than this one. Click it. You'll understand why.